This is the post-mortem report of Brittany Murphy. And if you know how to read it, it pretty much tells you the whole story of her life, but in particular, the days and hours leading up to her death. But what makes this case particularly unusual is the fact that I'm investigating not just one death, but two. Because her husband died approximately 5 months later on of the same thing.
She was a loving, giving person. I mean, she just was absolutely perfect. And that's just not admiring for being a father. She was a great girl, kind to everybody.
Brittany Murphy is a desperately sad story, but it's a real sad story of our times. You know, I think there's a serious point though, which is I felt desperately sad for Brittany Murphy. I've met her a couple of times, and she's a sweet girl. She was naturally very beautiful.
She was, you know, Britt passed away as an adult, but she's one of those people who I always think about. I wish I could see what she would have done now, because again, Brittany was so crazy talented, and only the surface had been dealt with. Like she was such a good singer, and seeing how many people now cross over into music and movies, I was like, oh, I would have loved to have seen Brittany do that.
My fondest memory of working with Brittany, there are too many to count. She was such a gentle, fun person who wanted to make every day special for me.
Even though Brittany had become well known for her more gritty and obscure roles, like the character she played in Eminem's autobiographical film called 8 Mile,
also released in 2002, with Eminem in the lead, co-starring Mekhi Phifer, Taryn Manning, and Kim Basinger.
I hear you about dope rap.
That could be the
like
other.
that.
Yeah, that's what I said.
she had also taken a shine to light comedy and heartwarming chick flicks, like the yin and yang of darkness and light in one little package.
Everyone has their own taste in films, so I guess it just depends on what you're into. But these are some of my favorites. Okay. Oh, The Shining we have. Shrek! Shrek is incredible. This was the best movie I saw all last year.
With her contrasting role
as the sweet and lovable nanny in Uptown Girls,
Spot, and you don't know how to dry without destroying the environment. For every single roll of paper towels that you waste, a tree in the rainforest dies.
And I'm gonna die of botulism from the germs of that gunky towel, you tree-loving hippie.
At least I don't prefer tofu to normal hamburgers, my little friend.
And I'm not the one who's gonna get mad cow disease and go nuts, though you don't seem to have a brain to fry in the first place.
Oh, maybe not. But at least I'm not the one holding the gunky germ-infested towel.
in just about every instance, she embodies and becomes each character so well that whatever on-screen romance she was participating in soon became reality, which we saw with her brief romance with Eminem during 8 Mile.
And again when she starred opposite Ashton Kutcher for the rom-com Just Married, as a risque newlywed, both released in 2003.
Absolutely incredible.
Let's go.
Now?
Let's go. What are you saying? Ready? And camera. And action.
It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
This was when the Diddy parties were at their peak, and he and Ashton were very close friends. Brittany and Ashton were seen courtside with Diddy and Kim Porter on multiple occasions, and attended various events together, like the VH1 Vogue Fashion Awards. The entire landscape of celebrity and society was changing, as the internet was becoming more widely used and accessible by the masses. With celebrity gossip and the digital rumor mill beginning to turn, there was plenty of speculation as to why these two split, but no one can be for certain. People had thought it was due to a rude interview between Ashton and Howard Stern, making fun of her weight and appearance in Clueless. But there was definitely a lot more going on here. And the Diddy situation kind of confirms what I was alluding to with this series initially, years ago. I do want to touch on it and assure you I will be circling back to it, since this interview took place while he and Brittany were seeing each other.
You know what's funny is when she was 14 when we started the show. I was like 19, right?
Right.
And they're like, okay, you guys are going to be making out in this scene. And I'm like thinking like, wait, this is like slightly illegal,
that's
right?
probably your first kiss ever, right?
It was my first kiss. What's someone bet you made with Danny about our first kiss?
No, it wasn't the first kiss.
No,
It was like the second or third kiss.
It was the first, like the first week.
No, it was not the first week.
Whatever. Let me tell you what happened.
No, let me tell you what happened.
No, okay, so I never kissed a guy. So I was so, I mean, you know, Ash was attractive, and I was a 14-year-old little girl, and I was extremely scared for my life.
Sure.
And he was very nice about it. He was like, oh, don't worry. So I was like, okay. Then Danny goes and goes, dude, I'll give you $10 if you French kiss her. What would you stick your tongue in my mouth or some?
What? Oh, no.
$10.
You're making it sound like it was like really, okay, Dan, we had a little side bet, don't we?
Yeah.
Masterson has since been convicted and is serving time for forced trespasses against women. And he was Diddy's party pal. They almost seem to be attached at the hip. And with everything we know now, and with Kim having a very similar ending as Brittany several years later, it really makes you wonder what kind of extra villainous shit these two could have been doing together in relation to the crimes Diddy had been committing, which allegedly involved minors. They presented the Best Villain Award together at the MTV Movie Awards in 2003 to a child actress that Diddy openly invited to the afters.
Hey! Oh my gosh, this is so wrong! Everyone will suffer. Hey, MTV Rock! I won the MTV Movie Award.
Someone's an apple party tonight. Yes.
I'm not suggesting anyone is guilty of anything without being convicted in the court of law, but those particular lawsuits are still underway, so who knows what other pieces to this puzzle may fall into our laps in the future. By the time Just Married had its full theatrical release in 2003, he and Brittany seemed to be no more, and Ashton was unsure if they were ever officially dating.
So is there a point in the making of the film, because you said that you got together during the film, is there a point during the film that you can actually work out where you two got together?
No, we didn't get together during the film.
All right.
We, after, like 10 months after we finished making the movie, we both went off and did different movies, and then started hanging out together in LA, you know, just kind of by chance. And then, I mean, I don't even know that we're actually dating. We're just kind of companions. We just like spending a lot of time together.
Ashton immediately started seeing Demi Moore, which on its own was an interesting situation, but his involvement with Diddy continued. And Brittany had passed not long after Ashton and Diddy co-hosted their infamous 2009 White Party, which had also happened to be just over a week after Michael Jackson passed in his home, a near stone's throw away. Remember that resurfaced clip of a very adult Demi passionately kissing a teenage boy?
Okay, one more time. Somewhere over the rainbow.
Demi was also present at the 2003 VMAs and had presented Eminem an award for 8 Mile, because Hollywood.
And the winner is Eminem.
Right after this really cringy skit with Amanda Bynes and Hilary Duff, who were both still teenagers, I don't know who wrote this shit, but what was being normalized back then was not okay.
Oh my god, could Ashton Kutcher be any hotter?
Yeah. Yeah, if he was Colin Farrell.
Oh, that's so true. And can we please talk about Hugh Jackman for a second?
Yeah, he's like way cute.
Oh my god, I swear to god, backstage before he came out, he was all like, excuse me, where's the bathroom?
Oh my god, dude, he totally likes it.
I know, I totally think so too.
There is a lot of ground to cover, and a lot of truths that were happening simultaneously, many different possible contributing factors, and I intend to explore them all. After Ashton, Brittany stopped dating her co-stars for good. Unfortunately, the rot was every which way Brittany turned. Mid-June, she relocated to London to film Love and Other Disasters. On June 27, 2005, she participated in the Harrods department store annual sale opening, where there is always some guest celebrity.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2,
horse-drawn carriages and stunning designers' clothing and you know and being in a location where it's tradition. It is tradition, and I believe in tradition. No matter how frivolous and fun it is, I think this is absolutely fabulous, and it's so decadent as well.
After Harrod's owner, Muhammad Al-Fayed, passed away, numerous reports of forced trespasses against women began to surface. I obviously can't say for certain if Brittany had also been victimized by Al-Fayed, but she wasn't the only young star whose life seemed to roll off track after an opening sale appearance. Misha Barton, who I covered in my Dark Child Star Nexus series, had a full mental breakdown very shortly after her encounter with him. But Brittany pressed on. She was briefly engaged to Jeff Quantinetz, a media production executive and talent manager she was seeing mid-2005. By December, she was seeing Joe Macaluso, a production assistant for Little Black Book, where she played the production assistant of a daytime television show.
Diane Sawyer. Chic, smart, intelligent. And she married well. Good point. She's a little beige. No, she's taupe. Taupe is never beige. Taupe's classic, confident. It says, I'm elegant, and I don't need color to prove it. There you go. Oh, I want to work with her one day.
Her final major film role was in the neo-noir crime anthology film called Sin City.
Wondering if you could help me. Looking for somebody.
Cold night like this, everybody's looking for somebody, stranger.
Shelley sort of links together all three stories. She's a waitress at the local watering hole. She's scared out of her mind, but trying at the same time to be an independent woman.
Keep your hands to yourself or I'll cut your little peckerons.
Sounds like that. Her name is Nancy.
Eyes to the stage, Pilgrim. She's just a woman.
Nancy Callahan.
Perfect stuff there. It was all there.
The first time we see Brittany, she's in a man's shirt, and she is drawn basically nude. But I had a lot of options, a lot of different ways that we could do that. Still have the man's shirt on without her being nude underneath, because it's a very sheer shirt.
So Shelley basically wore these massive ass-kicking shoes. I mean, these spikes could kill anybody. They were pretty priceless.
With an ensemble cast including Bruce Willis, Jessica Alba, Elijah Wood, Mickey Rourke, Benicio del Toro, and Clive Owen.
The kind of total jerk loser who has to beat up on a girl to make himself feel like a man.
Our first guest is a lovely actress starring in a new film entitled Sin City. Ooh. Exciting. Ooh. Yes, it opens on Friday. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Brittany Murphy.
Even with all of the setbacks and short-lived romances, Brittany was thriving, yet her entire life had taken a downward spiral when she met Simon. Diddy, Ashton, and Al-Fayed aside, there is plenty to suggest Simon was also a detriment to her mental wellness and livelihood, but things tend to compound and expand as time goes on.
Is there anything out of the ordinary with her than the days or weeks or months prior to her death? Sharon, anything?
No. She was, we had all had a little bit of a respiratory flu because we were traveling, and she had at the least
she had a little bit of laryngitis.
Laryngitis, yes.
That was the only thing, and she, other than that, she was, you know, perfectly healthy and well.
If you die of pneumonia, it's not accident. People don't die at home with the mom and the husband present of pneumonia or of anemia. The most significant feature that's been indicated in the death certificate is the prescription drugs. And we don't know which ones are involved or the amount in the blood until they're going to release that apparently in about 2 weeks.
How could she die of pneumonia? It wasn't pneumonia. It was drugs. These cases are always drugs, and the people who are around her know exactly why it is, and yet the coroner calls it an accident, just like the coroner in Florida screwed up the prosecution of the Anna Nicole Smith crowd until months later when the Attorney General of California finally got it together. That's, I think, what's happening here.
Who'd you kill? What makes you think I killed somebody?
It's the Cappy. Wearing one of them orange murder suits. Like the shooters wear them things.
Actually, I left him for dead. They pulled through.
She got a lot skinnier. Her face became more gaunt. There were a lot of, accusations flying. Did she have an eating disorder? Was she using illegal substances?
Earlier this month at a fashion event, Murphy appeared painfully thin, and there's speculation she may have been battling an eating disorder for years.
And in fact, the interesting thing is clearly her size. She's underweight. It looks like an eating disorder of some type. And that happened so fast in 2005 that she had to publicly come out and announce that she was not using cocaine. The rumors were so widespread, she had to dismiss those rumors at the time. And then since then, when you talk to people in Hollywood, what you hear back is, we're surprised, but we aren't startled, meaning that there had been rumors for some time, for the last 2 or 3 years, that she had been seen out of it, spacey, a little disoriented.
In April of 2007, Brittany married the self-proclaimed director and screenwriter Simon Monjack in a private Jewish ceremony at her home that they shared in LA. This came as a surprise to many, as they had not announced their engagement and had scarcely made any public appearances in the very short time that they dated, which they say was around 8 months. The marriage wasn't even formally revealed by the couple. It wasn't until they were spotted at the Kentucky Derby in early May of 2007, where it was noted that the pair both had new wedding rings, that the public became aware.
Yes, I'm sorry. Does anyone have a question? Oh, my fingernails aren't as pretty as...
That's gorgeous.
My husband has exquisite taste. Thank you. We just celebrated our 10-month wedding anniversary last weekend. It's exciting. I love being married.
Reports had then surfaced that he was facing deportation due to an expired visa only a few months prior. In February of 2007, he had in fact spent 9 days in jail after being apprehended for overstaying his work visa.
I want to talk now about 32-year-old actress Brittany Murphy, who died last month. Her controversial husband, the unemployed British screenwriter Simon Monjack, is being portrayed as the villain in her death. He's being portrayed as a drunken bully living off a woman that he married because his visa had expired, and whose career that he helped ruin because of his obnoxious conduct.
On top of his looming deportation, Simon had a series of broken engagements prior to Brittany. He also had a history of financial struggles that he had tried to remedy by suing the production company responsible for the biographical film Factory Girl, released in 2006. He claimed that they had stolen his script, but being that it was based on a real story, there were bound to be similarities in the script and scenes. Monjack was likely just upset that they had received funding to begin the production and had therefore beaten him to the punch. Eventually, they were forced to settle with Simon and give him writing credit, as they were unable to start production so long as the proceedings were taking place and their hands were tied. The director, George Hickenlooper, stated, "He filed a frivolous lawsuit against us, making bogus claims that we had stolen his script. He held us literally hostage, and we were forced to settle with him as he held our production over a barrel." This earned him the moniker of Conjack among various circles of screenwriters, producers, directors, and the like within the industry.
When Monjack and Brittany's mother, Sharon Murphy, appeared on the Today Show last month, he denied reports that the star of Clueless and 8 Mile was just another in the melancholy Hollywood tradition of drug abuse. But while the LA coroner is labeling her death accidental, the coroner confirms that it was caused by pneumonia, anemia, and most importantly, by multiple prescription drug intoxication. The coroner goes on to say that Brittany's death was preventable if only she had seen a doctor in the last days and weeks of her life.
Because of the rumors, because if she changed her team, Hollywood is a village. And once you upset the villagers, they talk and they gossip and they rumor and they have blood on their hands. And I hope they wash them with very hot water, because the way they treated Brittany Murphy when she was alive was terrible.
But who exactly has blood on his hands? Just 2 weeks before she died, Brittany was fired by Warner Brothers from performing in the sequel to the animated hit movie Happy Feet. For a time, Monjack blamed the studio for the star's death and threatened to sue.
Can you tell me about the suit you're bringing against Warner Brothers? just what it is. So there's nothing really more I can add to what I've said already. So I hope Brittany gets justice that she deserves.
If he's looking for justice, perhaps Monjack should look in the mirror. Because now that it's clear drugs played a role in her death, Monjack's lawsuit is probably a non-starter. Add to that the fact that she was actually fired from 2 films because of alleged bizarre behavior. A month before she was fired by Warner Brothers, Brittany was also fired from a feature film named The Caller, whose producers blame Monjack's misbehavior. On the set to do his wife's hair and makeup, Monjack allegedly terrorized the film crew with drunken demands and threats, which he denies. Craig spoke with prominent UCLA professor Habib Sadeghi, who commented that along with Brittany's broken heart, her recent painful plastic surgery might have contributed to her drug use and death.
If you would imagine a young woman, a young actress with incredible talent, you can't breathe, you have pneumonia, you're anemic, you have this chronic pain, right? And you're taking cough syrups and all these medications which could lead into constipation, not being able to use the restroom. And that could lead you to be nauseous and vomiting.
Every story needs a villain, Monjack said after his wife's tragic death, concluding, and everyone decided it is me. And on that point, ladies and gentlemen, I agree with him.
He had intended to direct a film about Sigmund Freud based on the novel called The White Hotel, written by D.M. Thomas, which is how he lured Murphy in, offering her the lead role, but this of course never came to fruition.
I love the vibrant color of it, and I thought it was really fresh and delightful and still sexy. There's a bustier, and I loved it.
And what I'm guessing was meant to be like a romantic sentiment, Simon has stated that he had fallen in love with Murphy while photographing her as a teen, and claimed that he patiently waited while the two passed through relationships not meant for them, casting complete ignorance to his abysmally failed marriage and engagements.
Now, how did she meet? How did you come into the picture, Simon? When did you meet?
I met Brittany when she was, and Sharon when Brittany was 17, so we kept in touch for all of the years.
How'd you meet her?
I took a photograph.
You were a photographer?
Yeah, part-time. It's a hobby.
Oh.
And you know, we just became friends, and
it was friendly.
It was friendly for years, yeah. I mean, you know, I visited on sets and see Sharon, and you know, it was very. She was infectious, an infectious angel.
The romance was later.
Really?
The romance was later.
Brittany stated, "We first met when I was 17 years old. We checked in with each other throughout the years and remained friends. The easiest decision I ever had in my life was getting married. He's flown around the world to make sure we spend every single night together." In 2005, warrants were issued for his arrest in Virginia on charges of credit card fraud and theft allegations, but the charges were later dropped. In 2006, he was sued by a mortgage firm, Coots & Co., and was ordered to pay $470,000. Records also show that between 1997 and 2006, he was evicted from at least 4 different homes that the authorities are aware of. He was sued in 2007 by ex-wife Simone Bien for an unpaid settlement that had resulted from their divorce. Their infrequent public appearances, even after the wedding, and the way Simon took over management of Brittany and her finances left even more questions unanswered following her passing.
My job was to find out what she'd been up to in her last days, talk to people who knew her, what could have gone wrong, what happened. You would hear some different stories, but the one story that remained consistent was that Simon Monjack was bad for her. She first met him in 2006. He was known as a writer. He was always in the background, and we were always sort of interested in Brittany Murphy, but once they got married, they were holed up in that house 24/7.
She had apparently fired all of her people, her agent, lawyers, manager, the entire team, and they were all replaced by Simon. No one could even contact her without going through him. She didn't even have her own cell phone or control over social media or emails. He had control over everything.
So it's very interesting when Simon Monjack came onto the scene, because nobody was really aware of him until they were aware of him, right?
Brittany, there's a little kid back here that can't reach over all these.
He seemed a lot older than her. I don't want to use Svengali phrase, but it seemed more like a control kind of issue.
Last one, guys.
All right.
That's it.
This was a marriage between a fading starlet and an unknown screenwriter. She was recently married, right?
She was married about 3 years ago. Yeah, Simon Monjack.
A group of her friends and ex-staff had tried to intervene and began showing Brittany all of this evidence of his financial struggles and legal problems, the fact that he had been facing deportation, and all the other gory details. In spite of all of that, both Brittany and Sharon chose to side with Simon.
I couldn't believe that this bottom-feeding sociopath had actually worked his way up the food chain to someone who was actually a legitimate artist. So the first thing I did was I called her agency. I said, you need to tell her every word out of his mouth is a lie and that she's got to get the hell out. The word coming back was her manager had tried and gotten fired as a result.
This is all starting to come out. Her true friends know that Simon's not good news. There was this talk of an intervention, and this intervention took place at Brittany's house. These friends were showing Brittany and her mother documentation that, Simon had trouble with the law, that Simon had outstayed his visa, which he had. Brittany and her mom said, no, we love Simon and we believe Simon. Sorry. And that intervention failed.
Just before she had passed, she had been fired from what would have been one of her final films called The Caller, which started shooting in 2009, a supernatural horror film that was eventually released in 2011. The production representative claims that Simon had shown up on the set sloppy drunk and had disrupted filming, which led to her dismissal.
About a month ago, she was fired from a movie she was working on. Her reps say it was creative differences, but reports indicate that she was, according to the producer or director, problematic on the set, that her husband was on the set constantly and he was a problem.
The month before Brittany died, they had gone to Puerto Rico to film a movie called The Caller. When they got there, I guess she was only on set for a day before she left the movie. Now, the movie initially said that they had asked her to leave the project because Simon showed up and he was drunk on set, and she defended him when they tried to make Simon leave. Simon just had his lawyers contact the people who were doing The Caller and say that they had to retract that statement and say that it was a mutual parting.
Director Gordon claims that he was told that the team wanted Simon removed from the set because of his behavior, but Brittany rushed to his defense. And that's when she was let go, not only because of his behavior alone.
We know that she was let go on a movie in 2008. She was let go on a movie just in November in 2009. Nobody gets fired in Hollywood, but she was dismissed for problems, and she certainly did have a troubled marriage with her current husband, Simon Monjack.
And there have been rumors plaguing her for years about drug use and anorexia. Now, whether or not they're accurate, they're relevant because they did affect her career. And I talked to a producer who had hired her for a movie she was to be working on in just a couple of weeks, and he almost fired her because of those rumors. She called him personally, and based on that conversation, he kept her on the movie, which is now up in the air. But she had developed a reputation, and she was trying very hard to regain her career. But she had been called by some producers a space cadet because she seemed spacey. Whether she was anorexic, I don't know, but theoretically, the toxic reports will show something.
What they're going to be looking for is to see whether there were drugs in her body that might have caused the death, or whether she had some type of genetic abnormality that just caused her to die at 32, which would be unusual, but does occasionally happen.
It just seems so shocking for a 32-year-old to die of what appears to be a massive heart attack. Is there more to this story? There have been so much speculation, so many rumors of drug abuse and eating disorder.
One of the things I tried to do, as a matter of fact, last night, once I heard about the death, was call up people in Los Angeles and try to separate exactly what you said, the gossip and the rumor from the facts. And what I was surprised about was that although she had, at least to me, and I think a lot of other people that knew her casually, a clean girl image. She didn't have a bad girl image. A number of people, makeup artists that had worked with her on at least one film, including a studio executive who knew her, said that for a period of time that she had appeared at public events seeming out of it. They certainly talked about cocaine and heroin use at different times that they thought she was on, although they didn't see her use it regularly. They didn't see her use it at all, but they had seen her with this great weight loss. They had seen her even in one case, the makeup artist said, what she viewed as nodding out at 2 different times, and this was just within the past year.
Among the directors and producers, Simon was already considered a con man. But now they began worrying since he had tied himself to poor Brittany, saying that he was a dangerous guy, acting as if he had a lot of money when he was actually in serious debt, and using her money to enrich himself and improve his image, not to mention keeping his residency in the U.S.
I think instead of Simon Monjack, her husband, suing Warner Brothers for firing Brittany Murphy for alleged bizarre behavior, I think that the Sharon Murphy, the mother of Brittany Murphy, should think about suing Simon Monjack for aiding and abetting the decline and fall of a young actress who was brilliant and should have had her career thriving at the age of 32 rather than being someone who acts up on sets and gets fired from movies. And I think at some point we'll take a closer look at him.
Listen to this. It's one of her last interviews on December 1st at the premiere of her latest movie.
Why did June, do you think June ultimately cheated?
By the way, Phantom of the Opera was filmed in the exact same studio, which is no longer there. It was the oldest on the Universal lot.
I heard this was the last production.
Lost in the fire. Very sad. It was so beautiful, my goodness. And that ambience, of course, fed into a film such as this. I'm sorry, you were asking me about June.
Yeah, why do you think she ultimately cheated?
I don't know June's actual reasons for cheating. I'm very different from June.
Yeah.
I'm very, very different.
And really quick, last question. Is it easier, do you find it easier to film comedies or thrillers? What comes more naturally to you?
Oh, Lord. You know, for me, I've had the good fortune of being able to play characters that are stuck in the middle of comedic situations, comedic stories, ridiculous,
you could do it all.
or tragic. And it all has to do with the story and the director, and that's really where the decisions are made on my behalf.
Simon was born and grew up in southeast England. His father had passed on when he was 16 as a result of a brain tumor.
As he was growing up, Simon was the most incredible guy. He had an IQ off the scale. He was able to charm anyone. Old ladies, mothers, he would turn his charm on anyone.
From early childhood, Simon had that ability to manipulate the environment to get what he wanted out of it.
Simon was 16 when his father died. It was a terrible, terrible shock. He never was the same again. He was still witty and full of life and funny, but something died in him. And I think he became more and more unreal.
He was raised by his mother, Linda Monjack, who I must mention was a hypnotherapist and psychologist. This is most fascinating to me and brushed past in other video analysis and documentaries about this mysterious death.
I learned that this is Simon Monjack. He said his grandfather founded British Steel, something like that, and he's worth $1 billion. Since I'd never met a billionaire before, and I'm a very curious person, I decided to host a dinner. So Simon kind of held forth, and he kind of controlled the table. And he told us a lot of things about himself that night. He said that he was the largest collector of Vermeer, the great Dutch painter. He had more Vermeers than anyone else in the world. He had dated Elle Macpherson and Madonna. He said that he had been dying from terminal brain cancer and that he had bought an experimental treatment derived from the fins of sharks and that it had saved his life. He said that he had a collection of Ferraris, 17 in all. You know, we laughed and we had a good time, and, you know, I wondered if he'd ever finance one of the movies I wanted to make, and that was it.
Apparently, Simon had always had big dreams of becoming a Hollywood screenwriter and director. But his first and only attempt was a complete failure. The film was called 2 Days and 9 Lives, released in 1999. He made grandiose claims that it received some of the best reviews of any independent film of all time. But this was a bold-faced lie.
The only hint that anything was askew was that Simon had told me his movie was getting the best reviews in the history of independent film in England. My friend in London went to see the movie, and he came back and he said, this is pretty terrible.
Basically, it was a film about 9 people over a 2-day span in a rehab facility. How original and creative, I know.
So that was kind of shocking. Time goes by. I get an email from his girlfriend, and I find out that every single word out of his mouth was a lie.
I don't wish to discuss that bearded interloper.
I love what you do with your cards there.
Yeah, I like to throw them away.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it is. It's one of the few pleasures I have left.
No, oh, I'm sorry.
I know.
But it's liberating, isn't it?
Sometimes.
When 40-year-old Simon was found dead May 23, 2010, with similar causes to Brittany's death only 5 months later.
And good morning to you, Matt. Well, Simon Monjack, he was found dead overnight, and he's worn many hats in his life. He was a screenwriter, a photographer, but he was best known as a grieving husband after the tragic loss of his beloved wife last December.
The media and tabloids exploded with theories and speculation about what had now become a total mystery.
And now tragedy has struck their Hollywood Hills home once again as the LAPD responded to a 911 call for medical aid. This time, Monjack was pronounced dead. An all too similar scene to that tragic December morning when paramedics responded to a 911 call for Brittany Murphy.
One of the ways that Simon legitimized those lies was by bringing a lovely girl into the equation. That was the cloak. And it was perfect because she believed the lies too. So he lived off this girl that had worked her heart out for every penny she had. And when her money ran out, he was gone. And very quickly, he became engaged to one of her friends. I can't stress enough how convincing this man was.
You gotta move. We have to move. Go out, okay? Hey, back.
This evening, Mr. Monjack was found unresponsive. Paramedics responded to the house. He was pronounced at 21:45 hours. His death is under investigation by the Los Angeles County Department of Coroner with the assistance of LAPD. It appears to be a natural. There were some prescription drugs found that belonged to Mr. Monjack, and we'll have an ongoing investigation. Cause of death is pending. There'll be an autopsy probably in the next day or so, and pending toxicology, we'll be releasing the results after we get all those tests back.
After his computer was investigated, mysterious payments were found to have been sent to lawyers and other sources in Europe. Turned out that he had 2 secret children with 2 different women, and it was presumed that the largest lump sum payment of $48,000 was likely payment for a child support settlement.
And what did we find out later? We find out that he had a child that Brittany didn't know about. That none of us knew about he had a child. He was putting that child through private school in England. So I'm sure quite a bit of money of Brittany's went to the child.
The interesting thing about Simon's personal life is how little I think Brittany really knew about it. When he died, it started coming out. So he had a daughter in England. By then she was a teenager. But what people didn't know was that through my reporting, I had gotten in touch with a woman who lived in France, and she'd had a son with him. He had a child that nobody was talking about and nobody really knew about.
Did you know there was a second child?
Excuse me?
There's a second child.
I didn't know that. I only knew about one child. It was a second child. Wow.
Simon had pilfered nearly $3 million over the course of 3 years, producing fake deeds and bonds, purchasing fake jewelry, all as investments, but in reality he was just draining her financially.
Less than a week after Simon passes away, Sharon calls me up to the house, and she brings out this jewelry. Diamond rings, bracelets, necklaces, and she says, I need cash, so I want you to take this and sell it. I said, I represent 2 jewelry designers on Rodeo Drive. And so I took everything and I went to the first jewelry designer client and I said, well, what's it worth? And he just took the thing out of his eye and he said, none of it's real. And I start realizing, oh my gosh, he has lied to Sharon. She's going to be devastated. She thinks she's got $1 million just in one piece. So I get back to the house and she looked at me like, why is this jewelry here? I said, I just have to tell you, none of it's real. And her face, she didn't have to say anything because her face said it all. She said, well, I guess there's no property either then. I guess there's no stocks and bonds, and I guess there's no real estate. Sharon thinks she's got financial security. She has nothing. All she's left with is the house, Brittany's pension, and whatever was in the bank. She was devastated. She was devastated.
He had also been draining her physically and mentally, with the strain he put on her ability to work, the struggle with body image she had, and that he seemed to encourage.
In the year 2000, in Interview magazine, you know, a very important person in Hollywood said I wasn't f***able enough. He said I was huggable but not f***able. So I got these extensions put in my hair, and that made a big difference. Yeah, welcome to Hollywood.
This comment came back. She was cute, but she wasn't f***able. And she didn't get this part. And shortly after that, I saw her at a premiere. And she had lost an inordinate amount of weight. And she was dressing totally differently.
I don't feel any sort of weight Hollywood pressure thing. That's not a part of my life at all. But I do, I sympathize with anyone that has any kind of a problem with their aesthetics, because you know, that would be awful. I've been very fortunate to be raised in a family that embraces bodies and women and made us all feel confident about who we are. And I love food.
It was alarming to see how thin she had gotten, emaciated. She was so frail.
When I saw Brittany Murphy getting really thin, I knew that he had something to do with that. He loved anorexic women. He would look at me from behind in my jeans, and he would go, "Do you really think you need to wear those jeans? Because, you know, you look kind of..."
All right, remember Brittany Murphy? She was adorable as the slightly pudgy, tragically unhip 15-year-old in the movie Clueless. That was 15 years ago, back in 1995. Brittany Murphy's sudden death on Sunday was a stunner. She was 32 years old, no longer pudgy. In fact, she was rail thin.
The mother of one of Monjack's children, Elizabeth Ragsdale, claimed that she was denied health care when she had fallen ill during her pregnancy, that may have also had lethal consequences if her friend had not intervened.
I was really sick, and Monaco, in the beginning of the pregnancy, it was just severe nausea where I couldn't raise my head. So I wanted to fly my sister and everybody over. No. I don't want any people around running. Then my friend, who, she's not the type to take no for an answer, and she was also very worried about me because I'd been cut off from everybody. And she showed up at the villa, and she said, "You know, you look like you've just come out of a concentration camp." And she told Simon, "If you do not get her to a doctor, then I'm taking her now." And he said, "I will." But I believe that my friend saved my life.
Made you want to do it? Was it working with Karen? Was it the character, or was it just the piece as a whole? And
Karen asked me to play Krista, and I then read the script, and I'm a huge fan of Blue Car and a huge fan of Karen's work. So that was exciting in itself. I was intrigued by what it would be, and I did not put it down. It was definitely a page turner upon reading it. When reading a script, when the destination, for me, I was just trying to figure out who's the killer. The journey was the destination. And I got wrapped up in all of the characters' lives, and they completely, I was enraptured by all of the characters, and that's a beautiful character piece and so rare.
I think she had not a great track record with men who cared about her. And she was a romantic. She really wanted to find a guy who loved her, and I really wonder if she thought she had found that in Simon. Personally, I hope she had. So she had that piece. I think it's crystal clear Simon was interested in Simon, not in Brittany.
She wanted to marry him, and I said, "Honey, it's not been long enough." I think we were all sort of saying the same thing. Except for Sharon. I think Sharon was for the marriage.
Sharon raised Brittany as a single mom, and Simon became the man of the house. Sharon and Brittany had blind faith. If Simon said, "We have to do this," there was no question. they did it.
Her father left when she was quite young, and there was definitely an issue there. She was in search of a father figure, somebody who would take care of her and her mom. Simon gave her so much attention, and he said that he was a billionaire.
The transition that Brittany made was parallel with the transition that Sharon made. From a very focused, caring, strong mom to someone who seemed hypnotized. We all were scared and freaked out. Like, who was this guy and what was happening?
Simon had owed a man named Harley Pasternak money for personal training expenses.
Lady Gaga, Ariana Grande, and Katy Perry. The man behind these beautiful bodies? Celebrity trainer and nutritionist Harley Pasternak. But what does it take to eat and work out like Harley's celebrity clients?
It's about these small habits. It's about walking more, sleeping better, managing their stress, eating better.
Soon after seeing Brittany, he was suddenly able to pay up and began bringing her in. Not for personal training, though. Harley uses the words to help her prepare for an upcoming role.
I am a celebrity fitness and nutrition author. I trained Simon Monjack a number of years ago. First time I met Simon, he rolled up in a vintage Ferrari and he got out smoking these fancy Cohiba cigars, and his girlfriend had the biggest diamond ring you've ever seen. They got engaged the night before and she was happy, and then he said, "We're both gonna work with you." And then his balance started to run up a lot more, and I wouldn't let him book new sessions. And then he called me one day and he says, "Hey, I'm dating Brittany Murphy now, and I want to bring her in and for us to work out together, and I'll pay you what I owe you." And they showed up one day. Brittany was for sure under the influence of something. Pills, maybe. She was kind of slurring her words. She was very sweet and kind of all over the place. And he said, "Brittany's got a big project, and I want you to get her ready for the role."
Which is interesting, considering she was already a very accomplished actress on her own, and she had no major or complex upcoming roles. In fact, after meeting Simon, she was unable to secure anything more than a B-movie and straight-to-video release roles.
Okay, well, if I'm going to work with Brittany, I'll just deal with her team. And I remember reaching out to her team and saying, "She fired all of us. Simon is her agent, manager, and lawyer and everything now. You have to go through Simon." And they said, "We're concerned because no one can contact her directly. You can only go through Simon." I don't even know if she had a phone. Simon was the only one who carried the phone.
She seemed like she wanted to be with him?
She just seemed like she was high. So I don't know.
Muchachos y muchachas, the other day we overviewed a tweet that Kanye West shared with the world on social media. It was allegedly from his fitness instructor, Harley Pasternak. The text message itself seemed to have some threatening undertones, of which, if this indeed did come from Harley Pasternak, it alluded that Kanye had two options. Number one, that they would sit down and have a conversation, of course, with added stipulations attached to that option. Or number two, that he would have Kanye West institutionalized and medicated out his mind, and mentioned the extent to Zombieland. This was eye-opening for many people not assiduous to what we have been observing about the public figures of our world.
Harley P has been revealed to have a bit more of a questionable past, in spite of the connections he has now and being revered among celebrities. Kanye West, in early November of 2022, had revealed that Harley P was more like a handler/manager than any kind of personal trainer or life coach. He showed the threatening messages he was sent by Harley, trying to force him to comply with his team's wishes. He makes a very outward claim that this is how they control celebrities in the industry, and that they will use their children, their career, everything against them if they choose to go against the grain.
Is Kanye West okay, or what happened here?
So you can reach his publicists.
And as far as we know, West remains hospitalized and is reportedly under a psychiatric evaluation. Meanwhile, there have been signs of trouble over the last few days that this just wasn't Kanye being Kanye. Here's a timeline. On Saturday, the 19th, during the Sacramento stop of the St. Pablo tour, he performed only a few songs, then went on this wild rant, even mentioning Jay-Z and Beyonce.
Beyonce, I was hurt. I
it didn't end there. On Sunday, the 20th, Kanye did something bizarre.
What happened here? You know it?
Sorry. Would you mind so we can just diffuse this and, you know, just a quick statement, is he good? A thumbs up?
Is this during a workout, or? I know his fans are going to be worried. We just want to check in. Thank you.
Thanks. You can reach your publicist.
Some sources had claimed that it did seem like she was under the influence in the months leading up to her death, seeming very floaty, happy and polite, but very forgetful, and requiring a lot of coaxing and prompting, having her lines repeated to her numerous times just to get through each take. And sure, weed exists. Not every Hollywood celebrity does designer drugs. Some prefer the natural route, and it was and still is very popular in California. But there's no way it could have been a cause of death, unless by some silly circumstances created as a result of being too stoned.
My name is Alex Merkin. I'm a director. I directed Brittany Murphy in the film Across the Hall in 2008.
I'm going down.
Set. I did start to feel some red flags. First day Brittany's coming to set, she's 3 hours late, and I went to her trailer and Simon Monjack ordered an egg sandwich off of me. He seemed fairly out of it. He seemed to not exactly know who he's talking to or where he was, and I was concerned about it. I was definitely concerned about it.
I say he's here. He's at the hotel. How did he find us, or how did he?
Yeah, how did you find me?
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on 1 second, please. Sorry.
There would often be times where she just completely didn't know the lines, and I'd be feeding her the line, or the actor would have to feed her the line.
He didn't screw it up at all. Line?
I think you get off fucking over.
No, you mean everything in the world to him, more than I ever could. We'll take it from here. Keep rolling, please.
So, it definitely seems like during the final year of her life, she was under the influence of something. But what? And was she even aware? Is it possible she was being dosed? And for what reason? Perhaps to ensure obedience and complacency? Or something much darker?
Every day of my life, I work to hide my bones at the end. I take home my heart and play all my own. I get down on my knees and I start to pray till the tears run down from my eyes. Somebody, please somebody, can anybody find me? Somebody to love. Every day, oh, I try, but everybody wants to put me down. They say, I'm going crazy. They say I got a lot of water in my brain.